So we're going to start out by going through the frequently made mistakes that I've seen thus far while reviewing the Assignment 3B submissions. I've only reviewed a handful of them. There'll be more, I'm sure. And I removed the date back when things are due till tonight so people who have not turned in their submission yet can address these issues before you do your submission. So first of all, in Perform Crawl, you don't need to use an atomic long anywhere. Please make sure to format your code and comment it consistently. What that means is do stuff like this, where you put a comment here, as opposed to doing this, which is inconsistent, and then there's really no comment. There's no need to call .parallel. If you read the specification for this method, it says to use a sequential stream. This code in here is way too complicated. You just need to call the forEach method on the stream that's returned from crawl page, and then pass the consumer as a parameter. And you should also chain these calls together. So chain this call with forEach, so that's a little cleaner. And don't use forEach here, but instead use .count, and there's no need to create a local variable and then return an int value. So that'll be a lot cleaner. It's very, very short, actually. This method's pretty short. Same thing here. Please format and comment the code consistently, like this, as we just talked about. I'll have comments like that in the other places, but you don't have to. I won't change them and show you each time. Read the specification carefully and make sure that you use the correct parallel streams idiom, which is a clue to use the map multi method, and that'll clean things up quite a bit here. Down here, for crawl page, you don't need to repeat this check. This check should be done up here in filter. So there should be a filter call up here where there's that check. And down here, you don't need to repeat it. And make sure that you call in manage blocker before calling except, and only call except if the value returned from call in manage blocker is non-null. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. One way is to use an if statement. Another way to do this is to use the optional class, which is a cool class. That makes it arguably a bit more functional. I'm OK at the moment with either way. We might update the skeletons at some point so that the tests are a little bit pickier. Also, you don't need to check for page not equal null here. This should be done up above. You should only accept it if it's non-null, and then you don't have to do the check down here. By the way, one thing that we're going to change for the next version of the tests, I'm trying to come up with a more consistent way of showing where things split up. And so the idea basically is have a separate intermediate operation for each of the operations you're doing. So rather than putting a whole bunch together inside this method, or inside a map multi method, have them each do one thing specifically. So this particular approach does that. A later approach didn't, and so I'm going to change that for the next version of the test. We'll talk about that when we get there. Down here, please make sure you use explicit types rather than having to use instance of. So what that means is you would put in crawl.page, page, and consumer image, consumer image, consumer, and that way the type system will know it's a specific type, in this case, an image, rather than being an object. You can also use the whisper technique, which I think would look something like this. That's also another way to go. You don't need to have local variables. Please get in the habit of kind of chaining these calls together. So you'd say process page followed by the appropriate call in order to make the operations work properly here for map multi. Down in process page, for goodness sakes, don't use local variables that are initialized with array lists or linked lists. That defeats the point of using streams. And likewise, don't use forEach here, but instead use the correct parallel streams idiom, which is the map multi approach we talked about. In this case, it's OK to use if-else here. There's other ways to do this. If-else is arguably the cleanest way to do it. That's because what we're expecting if you replace forEach with map multi is a statement. You need a statement there. So that's why you can't just use a ternary expression by itself. And you don't need to create a list and then convert it to a stream. That's unnecessary. In process page, again, please use the explicit types. So this is going to be a stream of images instead of a stream of objects. Otherwise, your compiler will yell at you. Please make the call to get or download image inside the map multi call below for now. Now, this is one of the methods we're going to refactor for the next version of the unit tests. Right now, there are too many things that are glommed into the the map multi call. This should be map multi, not map. And there are too many things in there, so the next version of the skeletons and the test will expect there to be 2 calls to map multi, which is a little bit cleaner. But for right now, leave it like this, that's fine. Format the code correctly. Don't use Java completable futures. We talked about that before. Also, one of the goals of using map multi is to get around these map followed by filter calls. And although that is going to work, it's a little bit extra overhead because you have to have 2 nodes in the stream internal representation that's built by the streams framework, which is really unnecessary. So probably better to replace map filter multi-map with a single call to map multi, or as it turns out for the next version of the test, 2 calls. But the point is you don't have to have map followed by filter. So whenever you see yourself writing map followed by filter, objects non-null, you can collapse that into a single call to map multi. And that'll be something you can use in other upcoming assignments as well. Format the code consistently, and then something's missing here. If you take a look at the specification or you take a look at your earlier solution, then you will notice that there's supposed to be another call there. And also, please get in the habit of only calling except if the return value that came before it is non-null. So that will help make the code more robust in case there's weird things that happen. And I think the test cases hopefully inject weird things, so it should cause you to fail if you don't do those checks appropriately. Okay, so those are the main things to think about. Some of you have already submitted your solutions. The ones I've looked at so far have been in good shape. If you have already submitted your solution and you see some things here that need to be fixed, please go back and fix them and just push your code again. You don't have to fill out the form again. If you haven't submitted your solution yet, please go ahead and make these fixes before you push the code, and the code is due tonight by midnight.